December 31st, 1775, 250 years ago to the day, right here in what at the time was the province of Quebec, history would be made that would change Canada's future. It was here where the forces of Montgomery and Benedict Arnold would attempt to take Quebec City. That one battle, that one opportunity could have made the difference between who was in control of what today is present-day Canada. We have Montgomery and the Continental Army, individuals such as Congress's own, the Canadian Regiment, fighting against French Canadians and the British, their brothers, their cousins, in Quebec City. And it is exactly 250 years ago to the day. Soldiers dressed in equipment such as myself, the unit that I represent, the 8th Regiment of Foot, being present, doing what they can to hold off the American forces. Often, American writers try to underplay this as a result of their failure at the Siege of Quebec, but the reality is that the Siege of Quebec was an event where merely handfuls of British regulars from the 7th Regiment of Foot, from the 21st Regiment, a few officers from the Royal Artillery, and a few individuals from the Royal Navy, with a handful of individuals that we've been able to document from the 8th Regiment of Foot being present, would be fighting alongside French-Canadian militia, Scottish loyalists, and individuals willing to take up arms in defense of their land. This is the first time that Canadians, what will become Canadians, fight together as one force. We have Scottish individuals, we have British individuals, there are Irish individuals present. There are French Canadians, there are civilians uninvolved in any of these matters, and they're all fighting together as one. Eventually, months down the road, the Haudenosaunee allies will be joining them as they push the Americans finally out of the province of Quebec. And this is the one time where, for the first time, all the people who now form what is Canada come together as one. And they do so in defense of a country that is yet to be born. Often the War of 1812 is credited with this, but it is here, it is at this time, 250 years ago, on this day, that Canadians, people who do become Canadians, come together in defense of their land. These individuals are struggling from September and October into November. They've lost Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, they have lost Montreal, and the American forces have now made their way all the way up to Quebec City, and it is there, from accounts that we have from one Royal Artillery officer, for example, who talks about urban warfare, street fighting, the type of thing that we will see in the Franco-Prussian War a century later, house-to-house conflict, people fighting out of windows, fighting down corners, soldiers, officers, fighting often at times hand-to-hand in defense of their homes against Americans who thought at first that they would be welcome as heroes. The letters sent by the American Congress towards the French-Canadian people were intended to try to sell them on the concept of becoming Americans, on freeing themselves as they saw from the British. But the Quebec Act set things in motion to try to unify these people. It protected their religion, their language. French-Canadian priests, Catholics were fighting on the side of the British, supporting a unified nation, whereas rebels, those who ended up joining the Canadian Volunteers, they are the ones that were actually in the minority. The people of Quebec rose up to defend Canada with their British allies. And today we're here to honor that sacrifice and those who fought. They would have been dressed just like I am today. Blanket coats, the famous Canada cap, and appropriate mittens. These existed in the thousands. By the end of the war, we're talking tens of thousands of blanket coats, mittens, Canada caps, fully documented. You could look at my 3rd episode, The Winter Warrior, where I discuss this at length. These are very well documented accounts. There are thousands of these items. The soldiers are wearing these. British militia, Scottish, all wearing this equipment to try to survive. And this is one of their key advantages. They have snowshoes, Huron style, St. Lawrence. They have the blanket coat, the Canada cap, the mittens, things that keep them warm that the Americans were lacking. This equipment and preparedness for winter warfare, along with things that you can't even see, such as linen undergarments, a sleeved under waistcoat, flannel with corduroy arms or stockings. This is what these men had been living in for over a decade. Since 1768, the 8th Regiment of Foot landed in Canada, in Quebec. They were accustomed to this weather. In 1771, we could see at Fort Niagara that they're given numerous snowshoes, enough to outfit an entire company. And they make use of these things. We have images, we have reports. There are discussions of whether they'd be using moccasins with their snowshoes, as the Indigenous population did and the French Canadians did in the prior war, though we don't have accounts of that for the British. In fact, we have a record of the soldiers being complained about by their officers because of the fact that they're using shoes with their snowshoes and the concern of damage that is being sustained by the snowshoes. We have images of Montgomery where we see British soldiers going down a mountain not wearing moccasins with their snowshoes, but wearing black-balled shoes that have been treated for this weather. I've tested them out and they work very well in this weather. I actually preferred them to when I tried it out with the moccasins. Again, as you'll see on my new website, there are a series of blog posts about this that you can find out about by going to the link in the bio and reading about. These are very well documented situations and supplies that they're making use of. But this is the reality they're facing. A situation that they thought was hopeless. I personally own a copy of a newspaper that was intended to be released in Britain in January 1776. And the article says that the Canadians, the British, the French Canadians, and so on were defeated, that Montgomery and Benedict Arnold were successful, and that the war was now going to take a grave turn, that they were most likely going to be defeated. The article was wrong. It was written in anticipation of this. But these people, against all odds, rose up, and together they're able to defend what would one day become Canada. It is this moment, it is on this day that we form what will become a Canadian people. And it is something that we should remember today. The clothing that they wore, the equipment they make use of. It's cold out here today, rather unpleasant. I'm dealing with 2 feet of snow under me and more coming down. But this is the clothing and these are the situations they're fighting in. Snow was coming down. It was not a pleasant day. Montgomery himself is killed with grape shot. We have accounts of British officers fighting with their men down the streets. It was a nightmare situation. Again, this is the type of urban warfare that we're going to be seeing a century later. Yes, it takes place in Napoleonic Wars in some accounts, but this is really documented quite well in the Franco-Prussian War, again, 1 century later. But this is happening in Quebec. This is something that is often ignored, and it's important for us to remember. Today, thankfully, that is behind us. We now are allies with those around us. Things do get better and they do get worse at times, and hopefully we continue to improve our relations with our friends to the south, because these are moments though that we should remember, but that we should put behind us as we build friendship. Going from that, I do want to point out some of the equipment. I've talked about the Canada cap and the mittens and the blanket coat. I've talked about the underwaist coat. Again, you'll find these on my blog, but there are other things. We have leggings that we make use of. Full-length leggings. The 8th Regiment of Foot is somewhat out of fashion when it came to using this. They become popular with loyalists later on, where they use leggings with ties instead. The 8th Regiment of Foot continues to use clothing such as this. The Light Company cuts down their coats, as I portray, a cut-down coat. The other company's full-length coats, such as in Michelin Mackinac, but they are wearing breeches, not trousers, which are quite good in the winter. You have thick stockings, you have leggings, you have wool breeches, and they keep you warm compared to the trousers, which I will document in the future, are not quite as effective in this weather. Linen trousers are not the greatest. Wool trousers work quite well, but the leggings with the stockings and the breeches, they're wonderful. The blanket coat is intended to be churned up so that when you're going through deep snow and through brush, you do not tangle yourself as much. And they do have a stand of arms differing from company to company, regiment to regiment. In my case, I'm using the Shortland pattern musket, as I have documented in other videos. This example, the 1762 Grice version, is what the 8th Regiment of Foot would have been issued. This is not the same musket, though, that all of the men were using. French Canadians were using their own equipment, often at times from their own homes, equipment that was released from stores. Loyalist units are often not given the short or the long land pattern musket. They were using whatever they can purchase, whatever they were able to obtain, such as in the Butler's Rangers, using French equipment, using private purchase equipment. We have the cartridge box, in this case a belly box, and an original period bayonet, not a reproduction. And we have this, the powder horn. Not as a main weapon for loading, accoutrement for loading, I should say, but as a backup tool. You can use it for priming when you need additional powder in your pan. You can use it for loading with your ball bag if necessary, but it is the cartridges in the belly box that you're primarily going to be making use of in defense of yourself. This is the equipment that you're wearing. This is the equipment that you're using. It's not easy. Firing one of these is quite possible with mittens, as you can see. You can use it. Yes, I kept the hammer still on. The conditions are bad. I want to keep my musket clean. It's coming down rather hard in terms of the snow, but you can see you can fire this, you can load this. It's not a problem doing it with mittens. But these are the situations they have to deal with. These are the realities that they faced on this exact day 250 years ago. There'll be more that I'll cover in the future. But for now, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this. And again, use this moment to learn about our past, but to also bring everyone together. These are moments from our past, and it's things that we need to learn from, but we need to come together as friends, regardless of where we are and what we believe in, because at the end of the day, we are all one people trying to survive. Thank you. God save the King.
Up to mighty London came an Irishman one day. As the streets are paved with gold, sure everyone was gay, singing songs of Piccadilly, Strand and Leicester Square, till Paddy got excited, then he shouted to them there, "It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go, it's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye Piccadilly, farewell Leicester Square, it's a long, long way to Tipperary.